Hello there and welcome to this little screencast all about your GCSE Key Process C. Now this is obviously very important. It can be up to 10% of your final mark on your practical grade, and this is just the basics that you need to do in order to actually get a good grade. So what we first of all need to do is look at you filling out the basic information on the template, and that includes your centre number of the centre you're at, your own personal candidate number, then your name, the activity you're going to be choosing. Remember, it's got to be one of your 4 chosen sports that you are going to be assessed on, and then whether you're doing your assessment on yourself or you're doing about somebody else. So the basic principles of your key process is that you're trying to identify the strengths and weaknesses of your own performance or somebody else's, and you are trying to make comments and review what is good and bad about it. It's then looking at how you can then make these things better and coming up with a little plan of what you need to do in order to make it in the future. So if we have a little look here, we've got this fantastic Prezi by Mr. DJL, so thank you very much for the help with that, and we're concentrating on the strengths and weaknesses. Now it talks about us trying to use 3 areas that we need to do to actually show what our strengths and weaknesses are. So we need to identify what our strength or weakness is, explain what the cause of it is and why it's happening, and then identify why it is having an impact on the performer. So try and get those 3 areas into your head: identify, explain, and then identify and justify the reason why it has an effect on the performer. So if we look at Miss Smith's example, she's identified 2 key strengths of hers in netball. She talks about her chest pass and her shooting, and if you look at how she set out her strengths, she's actually highlighted it, making it very simple for the marker to see what it is she's actually doing. She then goes on to talk about why she believes her strength to be a strength of hers. She's done a self-assessment, so obviously it's quite important that you mention that, whether you're doing about yourself or others, when you are talking about it in your text. It's also really important that you make sure that you talk about what that actual particular skill is that you are doing and you are monitoring, whether it be a strength or a weakness. So talk about it, talk about what a good one looks like and why it's good. So Miss Smith's talking about why she believes it to be a strength of hers, and that what it is, that it's a powerful pass, etc., etc. Really important to give a good understanding of what it is you are trying to achieve. So moving back to our Prezi, just read through it really quickly. In the red you'll see the identification, the yellow you're looking at the explanation, and then the orange here you're looking at your justification. So a good example of a strength is my ability to last the whole game without getting tired. Identification: this is due to having good cardiovascular endurance, which allows my heart and lungs to keep working efficiently over 60-minute game. Given a very clear explanation of why it is a strength. This allows me to play to a high standard throughout the game. Justification. It then goes on to show us our bad example, which gives a very short, concise answer about why it is a strength. Now, both these strengths and weaknesses can be caused by components of fitness. So it's one thing that you need to make sure that you are really aware of and that you know inside out. What components of fitness might affect your strengths and weaknesses? So if we go back again, we could look at how some of these components of fitness, such as muscular endurance, can be affecting your strengths, and you need to make sure that you talk about that within your text. Remember, we're looking for a high level of detail and identification so that you can actually get the maximum amount of marks. Now, Mr. DJL continues to talk about how technique can also affect that strength or weakness, and you need to talk about that as well. So when you've justified and explained what each strength or weakness is and the actual skill involved, you may want to talk about what perfect technique is or why you've got that bad technique. So when you're talking about the technique, make sure you go step by step so that you're showing breaking the technique down, so that you're showing the marker exactly what it is you're doing, whether it's a strength or a weakness. Again, look at the red for identifying, yellow for explanation, and then orange for justification. Now, if we watch the first section of this video, it really gives an idea about what we're after. Looking at identifying the skill as our strength, and then talks about it and reviews it in a level of detail that again explains and justifies the reasons. Have a quick watch.
3 Test match 50s from Mohammed Yusuf then to go with his 24 Test 100s. Amazing stats, and we've all been eulogising about him in the commentary box. So what are the ingredients that go together to make such a superb Test batsman? Firstly, there's a resolute, almost impregnable defence. It's really compact. See this forward defensive shot here, bat and pad close together, no extra flourish needed. He also stands very still at the crease. There's no trigger movement from his feet, and he has braced knees as well, which is a nice relaxed position, and an upright head and level eyes. So a very still position at the crease before the bowler releases, the bat taken back to about first or second slip. That is the perfect stance, and he follows that up with the perfect defensive shot here with the bat exactly perpendicular to the ground, maker's name towards the bowler, head right behind the line, and ideally side on.
By watching that, I'm sure you'll agree, high levels of detail, giving lots of emphasis on what is right and what he's done to make it a perfect shot. So moving on from our strengths and weaknesses, we now need to start going on to the processes after that. We're now looking at improving performance. Our first section is deciding on what we're prioritising. So generally people are going to use their weaknesses. People generally talk about their weaknesses because there is a lot more to talk about. You've got more levels of depth of detail, there's more you can identify in terms of things that are going wrong, and therefore more to talk about. When you're talking about it, remember these two little things. What is the outcome to be improved, and is that going to affect your performance? So what is it you're going to improve? Highlight it into a specific area such as skill, technique, components of fitness, strategy, tactical composition. All of that's in here in the guidance down there. Now, when we're following this up, Miss Smith has obviously started looking at this as well. She talks about what areas she wants to improve, how she's going to do it, what it should look like, and all those areas that has been previously mentioned but in a slightly more detail. Needs to talk about how you may be able to improve that, and like we say, going back to the information that we're trying to get in there, we are looking at skills, technique, components of fitness, strategy, and so on and so on. So, looking at how to make things better, we want you to now concentrate on the corrective measures. What is it you're doing to improve that performance? We need to start talking about little drills. What drills would you do to make your weaknesses better? So if you're a rugby player and you're concentrating on tackling, what sort of drills might you do? You need to research these and make sure that you have a good knowledge of what it is you are looking to do in order to improve. What drills might you do? Which part of the skill might you target? Are you going to be more specific? Are you, again, using the rugby example, are you going to tackle lower, higher, around the smother tackle around the upper body, or lower down if you need to get them down quicker? How will you know if you're doing it right? Are you going to be looking at models of perfect practice? Are you going to get someone to coach you so that you can make sure that your corrective measures are actually helping you? What improvements of components of fitness might you need to do? Are you going to talk about strength, agility, speed, power, etc., etc.? Miss Smith has used these ideas about feinting for her dodging in netball, and she's given us little ideas with some little diagrams on her template. I think this is a great idea because obviously it means that you give far more detail and it gives a good visual representation of what it is you are trying to do. Remember, you need to talk about two weaknesses, two things that you're going to be correcting in terms of your aspects of performance and outcome that you're improving. So make sure you use plenty of detail so that you get all these things in the right place and that you've got plenty to work on. Talk about how each aspect is affected and go back and refer to those areas of skills, tactics, techniques that we talked about earlier. So our final section talks about what we're going to do in order to monitor our improvements and the action plan we're going to come up with to make ourselves better from our perceived weaknesses. So we need to talk about how long it's going to be, what training method you might use, what baseline testing are you going to do to give yourself some information about whether or not you're going to make improvements later on. Detailed training plan. For those of you who did a PEP, you might want to refer back to that to look at some of those ideas, and then just have a little look and compare some of the available training plans that are out there. I mean, I very quickly had a look at this badminton one. I typed in about a badminton smash, and it talks all about how to increase the vertical jump, how long it's going to take, little videos about power, etc., etc. Really is a lot of information out there. Finishing off here, looking at some of those components for your action plan, looking at that fitness testing. You might want to film your performance, your training sessions, so that you can therefore talk about what you are going to do and how you've done it compared to an elite athlete, as we've already talked about, and get that verbal feedback from a coach, a colleague, or somebody else who's an expert on the area. Remember, you're talking about your experiences, your knowledge. Okay, talk to your teacher and talk about what might suit you best. It seems quite daunting, but when you actually get into it, it's quite enjoyable. You get into a bit of a flow and you get all that information that you've learned over the past 2 or 3 years, and you get it down on paper. Just to finish off, thank you very much to all those who have contributed from information I found on Prezi, on websites, YouTube, all those areas. It really is very helpful, and hopefully it's going to be beneficial to you students. Best of luck.